When it comes to the world of Frank Castle, aka the Punisher, it's always the end that justifies the means, because this bloodthirsty vigilante, as we all know, simply knows no limits. You'll either find him unloading interminable rounds of ammunition, or you'll find him strategizing his next move on the enemies. In both cases, his enemies are complete toast. Fans of the Punisher are well versed in the fact that when he strikes, he does not really look at gender, he just gets his job done. Now, for those of you thinking that it's just the Incredible Hulk who's capable of wreaking some serious damage with his Berserker rage, we urge you to rethink. Remember the time when the Punisher had literally turned the Hulk into dust just by snapping his fingers? Well, and you clearly can't disregard that. He may not have the superhero tag, but trust us when we say he doesn't really need it. After all, the Punisher is extraordinary in his own way, and there's no denying that. Now, it goes without saying that the Punisher has indulged himself in his fair share of most epic and violent encounters. And that brings us to the main content of today's video, where we have an interesting compilation of the top 12 instances where the Punisher has unleashed his Berserker rage. We're super psyched about this video. Are you ready? Well, we'll dive right in a minute. Before we go into our explanation, we just have a small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Okay, thank you. Ready? Let's begin. Punisher kills a whole terrorist group single-handedly. Iron Man, Rise of Technovore. Hiroshi Hamasaki's Iron Man, Rise of Technovore was enough to keep Marvel fans happy for a lot of reasons. To begin with, the events of this 2013 Japanese superhero anime flick took place in the Earth 101001 version of the Marvel Universe, together with the 2010 Marvel anime series. Subsequently, the 2014 Japanese superhero anime movie by Madhouse, which was titled Avengers Confidential, Black Widow and Punisher, even served as a fan-favourite sequel. Now, before we go jumping into exploring Punisher's Berserker rage here, let's just delve a bit into the background. The plot line is quite simple. Iron Man gets framed by the technologically insane Ezekiel Stane after the latter unleashes a terrorist attack. Of course, Iron Man is hell-bent on wanting to know who's behind the attack, so he's joined by Punisher while looking for ways to clear his name. With Tony Stark coming to know that AIM has been carrying out some techno-organic weaponry research for some time, and being able to locate one of their warehouses, he heads over to Karachi. But before he can reach and intervene, the Punisher appears at the Karachi warehouse. Now, we all know how highly trained the Punisher happens to be, especially when it comes to infiltrating heavily guarded enemy territory. No wonder invading the warehouse was just a piece of cake for him. With the Punisher discovering that AIM is attempting to sell weapons to an armed militant group, it goes without saying that he ends up abruptly terminating the exchange. Resorting to his M16A3 and a Derringer D32, the Punisher is seen mercilessly and single-handedly, may we add, slaughtering every single one of those terrorists. We're pretty sure that he wouldn't even have spared the AIM scientist, who was previously seen selling the weapon to militant buyers, had Iron Man not arrived there and prevented him from doing so. In fact, he had almost shot the scientist, but Iron Man was fast enough to catch hold of the bullet, thanks to his exceedingly powerful Iron Man armor. Punisher brutally beats Mafia in the gym, the Punisher TV series. When showrunner Steve Lightfoot came up with the television series Marvel's The Punisher, many were shocked by the brooding brutality on display. Now, there's no denying that Season 1 was packed with the most epic badass fights, ranging from feral fistfights to gaudy gunfights, but just when you thought things couldn't possibly get any more violent, Season 2 swooped in and proved everybody absolutely wrong. There's a reason Frank Castle is called The Punisher, and in Season 2 he pretty much lives up to his name. Amongst a horde of the bloody battles that are featured, the one that categorically upped the ante was the Punisher making full use of a gym, yep, you heard that right, and simply beating the shit out of the Russian Mafia. We're stressing one-eyed Jacks here, the 5th episode of the 2nd season of this TV series, where fans of the vigilante actually got a peek into Punisher's special workout regime, with the Punisher heading straight into Kazan's gym, which served as the base for the operations of the Russian Mafia, so as to confront the Russian gang member Kazan and get a few answers out of him. We knew it was going to be an utter bloodbath. After all, when the Punisher comes looking for answers, he usually likes to leave a string of messed up and dead bodies behind. With Kazan refusing to cooperate with the Punisher and telling his subordinates to take care of him, the Punisher literally shows him that it's either his way or the highway. While he is initially seen to be making use of punches and kicks, he then shifts his attention towards using his dumbbells. And when we say dumbbells, we mean the Punisher literally uses them to strike the Russian criminals and break a few craniums in the process. Next, he makes good use of the heavy kettlebells and barbells, and of course, you don't want to miss out on the weight plates. Oh, and he's absolutely brutal while he's breaking backs, bones, jaws, and whatnot. So to add to this, a lot of grunting, yelling, and fierce headbutting, heavy blows are thrown into the faces as well. Mind you, when we state heavy blows, we're literally referring to the Punisher going to extreme lengths to distort his opponent's faces. As per usual, you wouldn't be able to recognize the Punisher's foes after he was done with them. Punisher brutally kills Orion. Avengers Confidential, Black Widow and Punisher. It's only fitting to address Kenichi Shimizu's 2014 Japanese superhero anime Avengers Confidential, Black Widow and Punisher as a loose sequel to Hiroshi Hamasaki's 2013 superhero anime flick Iron Man, Rise of Technivore. However, unlike Hamasaki's movie, the character of Iron Man takes a backseat and the emphasis remains on Black Widow and our beloved Punisher. The plotline of the movie is simple enough. The Punisher is seen working together with Black Widow on a mission that requires the duo to take down Leviathan, a global terrorist organization that had stolen S.H.I.E.L.D. technology under their possession. While the sinister group plans to sell it to the highest bidder, the goal is to prevent this technology from falling into the wrong hands. Of course, if only things were that simple. This very effective animated offering from Marvel is particularly known for its high-intensity fight scenes, but the winner happens to be the sequence that the Punisher savagely kills the power-hungry terrorist Orion without even the slightest bit of remorse. It's almost towards the end of the anime film that this scene takes place, and it's safe to say that the Punisher had built up his maddening rage that we see on display. Those of you who have seen the movie will know that the Punisher's initial target was the former S.H.I.E.L.D. scientist Elias Starr, the one accountable for creating the super soldier serum for Orion in the first place. Now, the Punisher would have pulled the trigger on Elias despite Black Widow telling him not to do so, but with Orion attempting to kill Black Widow by shooting a fatal blast towards her, Elias is seen sacrificing himself by jumping in the way in order to save his former lover from getting killed. Naturally, this has the Punisher coming to the realization of who the real perpetrator is, and he is seen to go absolutely ballistic. He immediately starts firing at Orion with his gun, and of course Orion proves to be a tough match as he defends himself pretty well and fires a few blasts back at the Punisher. With one of Orion's blasts hitting the Punisher, the latter goes totally mad at rage and doesn't stop until he stabs the laser eyes of Orion, thereby killing him with his signature Gerber MK2 fighting knife. Punisher beats the crap out of Billy Russo and gives him a permanent scar on his face, the Punisher TV series. While it's just not possible to keep track of the official body count, or let's say the number of blows that Punisher effectively managed to land on his enemies, when it comes to taking a look at some of the bloodiest episodes of the Punisher TV series, the first season finale was bound to go towards the top of the list. Memento Mori served itself as a hands-down goriest episode ever. Still boasting an IMDb rating of 9.1, the storyline has a completely worn out but unbroken Frank Castle, pledging to put an end to the war that has devoured the peace of his mind in the first place. Naturally, Billy Russo's betrayal of Frank Castle was a particularly nasty internal wound, especially because Castle always regarded Billy as a part of his family, and to top things off, Billy coaxed Frank into a final confrontation at the very place where the latter lost his wife and children. The finale showdown was going to always be violent and unapologetic. Just when you thought Billy had overpowered Frank, the latter proves us all wrong. Frank, all this while, was simply looking for a loose end, and he found it in the form of a shard of mirror, which he makes total use of, and he stabs Billy right in the stomach. Of course, Billy is shocked by the move, and while he manages to take the shard out and coughs up a bit of blood, Frank wastes no time in punching him up against the mirror. Up until here, it was safe to say that this scene didn't really involve much barbaric brutality, but we can't really say the same after what follows. Frank was hellbent on making sure that Billy never looked at himself in the mirror again, so after he punched Billy into the mirror, he turned his face towards the broken glass and dragged it downwards, thereby distorting and scarring Billy's face to a horrific new level. To see Billy's bloody face is difficult enough, but to see the broken pieces of glass stuck inside his mangled face, well, that is quite stomach churning. Oh, and that wasn't all. Frank kicked Billy's face in towards the mirror again. After that, he ended up slamming it a few more times for good measure before leaving Billy with an unrecognisable visage. This scene is certainly not for the squeamish, requesting all viewers that you watch it at your own risk. Punisher brutally kills inmates. Daredevil TV series. The events of this particular scene take place in the 9th episode of the 2nd season of the TV series Daredevil. But before we go into details, please know that Drew Goddard's Daredevil was predetermined to be a bit darker when compared to other Marvel projects. The series followed the escapades of the blind superhero Matt Murdock, who happens to be a lawyer by day, and at night, of course, he's a masked vigilante. True, he doesn't really kill criminals, but let's not disregard his penchant for cracking craniums and breaking bones. The series is predominantly famous for its ultra-violent content, which brings us to the Punisher and his involvement in a very nasty prison brawl. We find the Punisher in prison under a death sentence at Rikers Island. We're not entirely sure if he knew that he was being played by Kingpin, but nonetheless, he did what he was asked to and stabbed a drug dealer, Dutton, to death using a shiv. But with the Punisher attempting to leave that cell block, the prison guard who was in charge of letting him out does not unlock the door and instead opens every other cell of the prisoners in the block. The prisoners, upon finding Dutton lying in a pool of blood, end up attacking the Punisher like a horde of bees. The Punisher starts counterattacking, of course, with his fists and punches, but eventually resorts to using his shiv against them. He makes it pretty clear that he isn't just looking to hurt, but that he intends to kill everyone. I mean, what else are you gonna make out of the Punisher stabbing one of the attacking inmates thrice in the guts in rapid succession? Of course he's going for killings. The Punisher ruthlessly carves his way through every tries to attack him. He single-handedly breaks necks, slits throats, stabs them, gouges out eyes, just using his bare hands. And in short, of course, he emerges victorious against every single one of them.
Who the heck is that?
Just waste them!
Punisher beat the goons and made them surrender. Spider-Man, the animated series. While the Punisher, voiced by John Beck, did appear in Spider-Man the animated series, please note that the character was restricted to using non-lethal weapons as a means to meet requirements for children's programming. Now, when we say non-lethal weapons, mind you, the emphasis is strictly on gimmick guns, electrified net launchers, and let's not forget the concussion blast energy weapons. You'll also be surprised to know that while his origin story happens to remain the same here, the death of his family was not portrayed on screen. Instead, a kite was first shown flying and then falling, and to add to this, the sound of gunshots in the background. But having said that, personality-wise, the Punisher still happens to be the same violent criminal vigilante, the one who was determined to take down criminals and fight against crime. So there's that. This brings us to the 7th episode of Season 2, titled Chapter 7, Enter the Punisher. And as the title suggests, it's this very episode that introduces the vigilante. As per the scenario, we first get to see a woman being held hostage at an abandoned warehouse. There are 3 goons with her, and they have big plans to extort close to $1 million from her rich father. All of a sudden, we find an undisclosed man in a trench coat deliberately causing an explosion, one that results in a hole in the wall. We get a proper look at this man, and upon seeing his skull costume, it becomes quite clear that the Punisher has graced us all with his presence. The Punisher easily manages to take down 2 of the thugs. He hurls one of them over a box of crates and places a tire on the other one. But as for the 3rd goon, he starts shooting at the Punisher, only for the latter to sneak up behind him. This obviously catches the 3rd goon by surprise and he runs away, only to trip over himself and fall to the ground. As the Punisher comes closer to the thug, the latter picks up a chain lying nearby, and this results in the Punisher pulling out a gun from his coat and aiming towards the thug. While the thug is seen saying that he gives up, the Punisher continues to move closer to him while stating that post serving a year or a maximum of 2 in prison, he'll just be back on the streets, resuming his criminal activities. Upon realizing that the Punisher doesn't have any intention of leaving him alive, the thug, fearing for his life, jumps right out of a window and surrenders himself to the police. Punisher fights with the goons in the bar, the Punisher TV series. If you thought Season 1 was crammed with the nastiest of fights, we sincerely urge you to think again. It's only fair to state that Season 1 of the Punisher TV series simply sets the mood for what's to follow, future bloodbaths. Mind you, Frank Castle is still not great at making conversation or finding peaceful solutions. Now that the bases are clear, let's get into the details of this sequence right away. It's the very first episode of the 2nd season, and it gives viewers a fair idea of what they're in for. Roadhouse Blues features the Punisher doing what he does best, and that is single-handedly taking down mercenaries in his signature style. The goons that his character is seen fighting against in the bar are led by Marlena Olin, who is tasked by Pilgrim to locate and bring Amy Bendix to him. With Marlena and her mercenary mercenary crew cornering Amy, they are confronted by the Punisher, who by then has already made up his mind to safeguard Amy from every form of harm. Well, we all know what that means, but for those who don't, please know that a lot of slamming and punching takes place before they get elevated and replaced, before that gets swapped out with stabbing, impaling and breaking beer bottles on the enemies' heads. Even the fist fights on display are a lot bloodier and packed with intensity, and to add to this, the Punisher, having access to new places, is now more than ready to inflict various forms of violence on his adversaries. So in short, season 2 just couldn't have started on a better note. Punisher single-handedly kills the entire mob. Punisher Warzone. Addressing every lover of extreme action. Trust us when we say that you're in for a real treat. Lexi Alexander's 2008 action thriller flick Punisher Warzone can conclusively be addressed as the ultimate Punisher movie, one that features way more gore and bullets than a lot of action movies combined. To be honest, the storyline might seem a bit basic, but at the end of the day, it serves its true purpose. The Punisher in this movie doesn't just kill, he's very intimidating and likes to dismember his enemies in the most distinctive and brutal manner possible. Now, the part that we happen to be talking about is the very first scene. Frank Castle has already embraced the identity of the Punisher, and he is literally seen going on a killing spree post-ambushing a dinner party of local mobsters, led by Don Gaetano Cesar. The sole fact that Frank is highly trained in various forms of camouflage and stealth, he easily has the upper hand in gaining access to the heavily guarded territory. He deliberately cuts off the electricity supply in order to make his grand appearance, and once he's inside, there's no stopping him. While the mobster receives a swift death from the Punisher, it's not the same case for the remaining members present. For instance, the mobster's wife attempts to counterattack the Punisher, only to have her neck broken in the most gruesome manner possible. Next, he's seen stabbing a guest by placing his knife as he would casually do a fork into a steak, and while all this is happening, there's the occasional breaking of bones and fatal stabbings throughout. But as soon as any light comes back, the Punisher doesn't want to take any chances. He pulls out his gun and lets it do the talking for him. He's even seen leaping on the chandelier above, and while hanging from there in an upside down position, he's seen revolving around like a fan and shooting to death every mercenary who comes into the dining room. Amongst all his distinctive killing methods, there is a particular one that certainly deserves mention. While a regular guy would just use a chair to simply hit another person, the Punisher is actually seen using a chair leg and impaling the eye of some lad. It's only fitting to say that every kill is carried out in a typical bloody fashion and thereby sets the perfect violent tone for the movie, and at the end of the day, nobody really stands a chance against the Punisher. Punisher kills goons with a sledgehammer. The Punisher TV series. Hitting brick walls with a sledgehammer for hours is more like a recreational activity for someone like the Punisher, and if you ask us what he'd really like to do with that sledgehammer, well, I think we all know the answer is very simple. He prefers to kill goons with the sledgehammer. The very premiere episode of Steve Lightfoot's The Punisher TV series pointed viewers towards the season's future carnage. Okay, without beating around the bush any further, let's get straight into that instance. The iconic scene takes place at the construction site where the trio of Lance, Paul, and Leo are seen throwing Chavez inside a pit filled with liquefied cement in the hopes of drowning him. While Chavez starts screaming and tells them to turn off the mixer, Lance tells him how he is responsible for his own fate. By now, the commotion has already attracted the attention of the Punisher, who arrives there and tells the trio to shut off the mixer, but clearly Lance is not in the mood to pay heed to him. As he attacks the Punisher with the gun, the latter immobilizes him by thrusting the sledgehammer into Lance's kneecap, making him scream and writhe on the floor. Next, he attacks Leo, hits him in the abdomen with the sledgehammer, crushes his arm and delivers another hit to the back of the neck. And as for Paulie, the Punisher hits him directly in the face with the sledgehammer and kicks him with such intensity that Paulie's legs are broken in the process. While as Leo manages to get himself up, the Punisher swings his sledgehammer with such force that he ends up breaking Leo's neck, making him fall into the cement pit. We come back to Paulie, who somehow manages to draw a gun and attempts to shoot the Punisher, but he misses his target and instead breaks the sledgehammer into two pieces. After wasting all his bullets, Paulie tries to flee from there, and while he manages to get inside his car, fair play, the Punisher ultimately shoots him dead. He brings his body and throws it inside the cement pit. Now that the Punisher is done with the duo, he turns his attention towards Lance, who obviously begs for his life, but the Punisher has much worse plans in store for Lance and starts torturing him with the sledgehammer, only to then bludgeon him to death in due course and throw his corpse into that cement pit too. Punisher kills terrorists in Kandahar, the Punisher TV series. It wouldn't be fair to get into the details of this particular instance without delving a little deeper into the Cerberus Squad. Now, for those of you who are unaware, Cerberus Squad was formed by William Rawlins and Ray Schoonover as part of a clandestine military operation. The squad was posted in Kandahar, a city located in the southern part of Afghanistan, and their mission was to exterminate high-value targets, or so it seemed. Well, unbeknownst to the squad, Operation Cerberus was not only illegal, but it also did not have any congressional approval, and to top things further, Rawlins smuggled large amounts of Afghan heroin into the US using the very bodies of American soldiers. As time progressed, Operation Cerberus soon came to the attention of Afghan insurgent groups. With the terrorists leaking the location of high-value insurgent leaders in Kandahar, Rawlins ended up commanding the Cerberus group to attack the compound, regardless of the risk of ambush. No point in guessing, Frank Castle was a part of that squad, and despite knowing that the whole thing was a terrible idea, he went ahead with his team. Safe to say the whole mission was a disaster, but having said that, this is precisely where the viewers actually get to see Frank in his Punisher personality. Depending fully on instincts, he single-handedly charged into enemy territory and butchered absolutely everyone inside the compound. The goal was just to make it out alive, and he did that successfully. In the end, he was completely bathed in blood, and if you ask us to judge him by his actions, it's hard to differentiate him from a machine. Punisher brutally kills Anvil agents, the Punisher TV series. One can't really blame Frank Castle for embracing his murderous persona every now and then. In fact, you would have done the same had you been punished to extreme lengths like he had been. This brings us to Danger Close, one that happens to be the 11th episode of the first season of the Punisher TV series, which certainly deserves a mention here because it's in this very episode that the viewers get to witness the Punisher go absolutely batshit insane with Berserker rage. When a group of Anvil agents ends up infiltrating Micro's hideout, they unknowingly serve themselves as a feast of violence. As for the Punisher, we find him stealthily stepping from the shadows and taking out one after another without letting the other ones know about it. Personal highlights are the decapitated head that has a grenade stuffed inside of it, necks being broken, and dare we forget the occasional stabbings. And if these weren't enough, the Punisher eventually pulls out the big guns and goes absolutely feral with them. Literal big guns. He wasn't just firing, but he was being completely monstrous. There's one particular scene that needs a mention here. He not only goes to stab a guy himself, but also goes to the extent of slashing the guy's leg tendons just so that he couldn't walk. If you thought the Punisher was done with him, no, obviously he wasn't. It's only after he blows the guy's face off does he leave him in peace. And Punisher kills Agent Orange mercilessly, the Punisher TV series. The 12th episode of the Punisher TV series was put the Punisher through equal amounts of physical as well as emotional distress. If you're looking for a typical action sequence, you won't get that, but if you're looking for brutality, well, there's plenty of that and enough to make you sick. We have the rabid Rawlins torturing and beating the shit out of the Punisher, who was tied to a chair. The plan was to beat the Punisher so much he would beg Rawlins for his life. And that's what Rawlins wanted anyway, and upon seeing the Punisher lose the sense of pain, he jabs him with adrenaline to wake him up and make him feel pain. Next, Rawlins picks up his chosen weapon, a blade, and more precisely, a blade to be precise, and he climbs on top of the Punisher, aiming the weapon over the Punisher's eyeball. The intention was clear from the get-go, an eye for an eye. But as he gears himself up to tear out the eye, the Punisher manages to free his hands and thwarts Rawlins' actions by first grabbing hold of him and then headbutting him, thereby making him fall to the ground. The Punisher, now charged with adrenaline and fury, grabs Rawlins by the throat and knocks him to the ground, and then with the knife Rawlins had stabbed him with earlier, he plunged it into Rawlins' shoulder and throat in rapid succession. Of course, he wasn't done with Rawlins. Next came a series of knuckle-popping punches that rendered Rawlins immobile. Turning Rawlins' bloodied mangled face towards him, the Punisher's rage peaked when he ultimately plunged his thumbs inside the eye sockets of Rawlins, making him writhe to the point that he was no more. And these are just our 12 top instances. And so with this we come to the end of our video. So which amongst the 12 mentioned was your favourite moment of the Punisher going absolutely berserk with rage? Hit us up with your thoughts in the comment section, and also stay tuned as we promise to be back with more exciting content. If you liked our content as well, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't done so already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everybody.